All right. Well, thanks so much, Mary, and thanks for the invitation to address the East Cascade Oak Partnership. Oak habitat in the East Cascades has remarkable bee biodiversity, and it's been relatively poorly characterized. Here you can see one of our, well, there's going to be two volunteers in a second surveying a patch of vetch at the Columbia Land Trust Four Sisters property. So today I'm going to provide a scandalously brief overview of the program, how it might help with the metrics that we've been talking about this morning for assessing oak ecosystems, and how members of the partnership might help us in our quest to conduct a bee survey and inventory and of the state and characterize the range of these bees. The importance of this project is outlined in I have a weekly podcast called Pollination. John Asher at the National University of Singapore, who is doing biodiversity studies on a global scale, pointed out that actually when people talk about bee health and bee decline, we have to be a lot more specific because we really lack basic maps of where species live in relationship to habitats and ecoregions. And I think a particularly good case can be made between our bee biodiversity and remaining oak. Of course, there are efforts like this. Oregon Flora is, you can pick up a book, you can pick up one of their volumes, and volume 2 is just about to be published to any page, and you'll see there a species, you'll see where there are historic records, and you'll see an estimated species range distribution. And if you've been to the new website, you can, a lot of that information is digitized. So for land managers, you can get a sense of what both that plant community might have looked like in the past and what it looks like today. And we roughly have as many, we think, as many bee species as birds. So how hard could this be? Like how hard could it be to inventory, to get a statewide inventory? And it's actually remarkably difficult. This is a nice compilation of studies that have been done since the 19th century. The size of the symbol is the area that had been surveyed, and the color is the species, the number of species that were detected. And this is only, relatively large scale faunal studies that have been done. You see, there are very few that have been done. In fact, Oregon, we lack these kinds of studies. The other thing I want to point out is you see the dark colors, which is the number of bee species in the drier parts of the United States. In the West and in the drier parts, east of the Cascades is where all our bee biodiversity is, not west. The other thing to point out is the last inventory that I know of the species of the Pacific Northwest is from 1969. And at that time, it was estimated that we have 879 species. So clearly there was a gap in knowledge. And so to get around this gap in knowledge, what we developed was a survey that relied on volunteer effort and curiosity. And there are lots of these kinds of programs around there, around the United States. But I think that we've taken by circumstance, a strange way of going about doing this. What we've ended up doing is, rather than having a volunteer community science program where people are given very basic tasks, we actually went the other direction. We have a community science project where people are very hardcore. We do this through intensive investment in volunteer education. It's a multi-year program called the Master Melathopoulos program. It's kind of like the Master Gardeners. This is overseen by Jen Holt and Sarah Kincaid, who work in my program. All participants who enter the program are required to complete a self-paced 6-module online training covering topics such as bee biology, database management, survey techniques, and specimen preparation. This training focuses on practical technique development and includes interactive activities such as the pinning assignment shown here, where an instructor can grade the participants' work using uploaded photographs from the volunteers' growing collection. And key to the training is also making sure our students understand how to capture records. We use a workflow by which volunteers pool their bee specimens by host plant species at a given location. Plant and location data is captured using the platform iNaturalist. We extract these records and reformat them using a computer script that reassembles them into an online database where volunteers verify their location information And then we pull these records to generate location labels that go under each bee, which we mail out to the volunteers twice per month. This has not only been exceedingly efficient and error-free, but it's resulting in one of the largest databases on bee host plant records anywhere in the world. You can get a sense of this. You can just go to iNaturalist right now and type in Oregon Bee Atlas, and you can see there's been, our volunteers have sampled off of more than 1,000 plant species, distributed right across the state. And some of these volunteers, for example, this individual here has sampled off of bees off of more than 254 plant species. And these volunteers, because of this education, are really doing high-level tasks. So here's an example with an instructor and a volunteer who took it upon themselves to characterize the bee fauna of our cactus plants. The growing scope of these discoveries is highlighted in this heat map of Oregon counties, where the darker shade of blue represents more bees collected and the yellow dots indicate discrete sample events. Notice there's not only more bees and sample events in the second year of the atlas, but they're increasingly coming from the eastern part of the state where our biodiversity is. Our volunteers at the end of the year have nicely curated collections. All of those bees are data-based, and those bees will then be, if they're of high scientific value, will be deposited in the Oregon State Arthropod collection. Just skip this. Right now we're at this phase. All the collections are in. They're going to be handed off to our taxonomist, Lincoln Best, who's going to go through the volunteers, what they thought the species were, and provide authoritative determinations of what the bees were. We just published our 2018 data set, and what's really remarkable is it looks like in the first year in 2018, we think there's about 600 or so species in the of bees in the state, and there was almost 400 species that were collected by the bees, by the volunteers in their first year. And the great thing is the workflow allows us to get names on these specimens within 12 months of their submission. We've had some great high quality records. Bees like these two species here, one is a sedum specialist, the other one is a penstemon specialist. Both hadn't been seen or recorded in the state for over 50 years. We're starting to detect them. The last thing is, as I mentioned, species of note are deposited at the Oregon State Arthropod collection. And Chris Marshall, who's the curator at the museum, is working on a digital atlas that will allow you to be able to look at the records as land managers. Our volunteers, incidentally, also get a report back at the end of the year, which looks like this, shows where their samples came from and what species they detected. But the digital interface will look something like this, where you'll be able to click on a county and then drill down into, this is the how it looks currently. We're looking to have a lot more functionality on it, but you can click down, find the record, and then be able to pull down all the information, including you can see here, all of these records were recorded on Sankofoil. The end of the year, the data gets loaded up to global biodiversity databases, and we have publish, and we've just released our first year findings, sort of a summary of those results. You can find more about the project at oregonbeeatlas.org. And to Mary's point, the Oregon Bee Atlas is connected to the Oregon Bee Project. That's the statewide program for pollinator protection. This is supposed to inform the bee project in terms of how bee communities are doing over time. But let me just conclude by saying, how can master melathologists help in oak? We have a couple of things that we've started off. Here's Alex with the Hood River Water Conservation District. This is a pipeline restoration project where we've put up these nest blocks before restoration. What happens is bees nest in there. Here you can see the nesting bee. There's a mound of pollen and an egg. We can emerge them, and we can, it's a really discrete fauna that allows us to quickly move through and be able to characterize how that bee community is changing over time. How can you help us? Well, the big thing is, and I see a number of people we've already corresponded with from U.S. Forest Service. We have a nominal effects letter to survey on U.S. Forest Service land, but we're always looking for high quality landscapes where our volunteers can come on and survey. In the Mid-Columbia region, I know there's a number of people around on the call today. Frances Fisher, who's with the Friends of the Columbia Gorge, she's our point person for surveys in the Mid-Columbia region. So if you're interested, I think Frances and I are going to try and organize something, a survey next month when the Balsam Route comes on. And I just want to thank the groups that have supported this initiative, including a number of private individuals. And I want to hand it over now, just to continue on this oak theme and bees, to Emily Carlson, who's been working on a NRCS-funded project with oak in the cherry system in the Dalles.